Welcome to Weekly Wins and Losses. My name is James Hepner, former real estate entrepreneur turned self-development hacker, coach, and fulfillment strategist. Each week, we bring you a thought to wrestle with that'll help you live fully alive and gain more life. Real life is made up of both wins and losses. Both were designed for your good. That's basic reality. Without facing and learning how to embrace your losses for greater gain, you miss out. You leave 50% of your life experience on the table. So with that, let's begin the show.
With inflation rates rising, interest rates shooting up, gas prices skyrocketing, and the continued global unrest, it's easy to find what's wrong in the world. Tony Robbins says what's wrong in the world is always available, but so is what's right. Instead of trying to hope and wish the world into a better place, it's time to make the most important decision any of us can ever make, and that is to invest in yourself. Now, you know I've always stood with you as you've navigated the uncertainties of life's reality. However, it's now time that I step up and take decisive action to walk alongside your current life journey in a new way, and that is by making myself available to you in a radical, new way during these challenging times. So for a limited time, I'm inviting you to a 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge and no strings attached. This consultation is where you'll regain the reins of your life. It's where you'll gain clarity on exactly why you're stuck, moving you directly towards your optimal outcomes. And I'll be honest, and I'm humbled to say, however, my clients' generous reflection of their time spent with me reveals the truth. The skills they've been able to master in such a short period of time by engaging in our one-on-one strategic sessions have changed their lives in so many ways. This is the only invitation that I can fathom that will put my skin in the game of your life in such a way that will allow us, you and I, to address your specific needs with precision and excellence. 45 minutes, just you and I, together on one call to get you headed in the direction you crave most. Here's what my clients report after one-on-one sessions with me. A decrease in indecision. An increase in clarity, confidence, and courage. An increase to fully capitalize on what's directly before them. An increase in the impact that they crave to have at work, on their families, and inside their communities. A decrease in pain and suffering. A decrease in anxiety. So, if you want to move beyond old stories, get clear in where you're headed so that you can shake your world, then here's a rich opportunity for you today. One-on-one strategic business life consultation with me. One-on-one 45 minutes. So, if you want to maximize this opportunity, if you want to reclaim and regain your inner power, then you're going to want to slow things down during these challenging times. And how? Well, engaging and getting right with your life and making a life plan. I should let you know that this offer will fill up and expire. Click in the show notes to get your 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge, no strings attached. May this episode change your everyday life.
Welcome, friends. Today we have with us someone who I think you're really going to appreciate. Roy Osing, as former president of a major data and internet company, his leadership in audacious, unheard of ways, so remember, unheard of ways, you're going to want to tune into this, took the company from its early stage to 1 billion in annual sales. Roy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, James. Very much appreciate the opportunity as well to chat with your audience. I'm grateful. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And one thing that I should add is, and for the people here not to overlook, you're a blogger, content marketer, mentor to young professionals. And I think when I first got to know you, that's one thing that I appreciated so much about you. And that is choosing to mentor young professionals, right? And so you're also an accomplished business advisor, and you're the author of a no-nonsense book series. It's called, an audience, this is a good one, Be Different or Be Dead, with the audacious, unheard of ways, which took the startup to $1 billion in sales. So Roy, talk to me about what is it? You are a little older than me. I don't want to make me look like a teenager because I'm not, but I'm 46. You're a little older. Hey, why don't we? I don't think I've ever asked this question. How old are you, Roy?
I'm 76 years old.
70. I was born 1976. So thanks for that.
So the way to look at this, the way I look at it is eventually I'll get it right. So I just keep banging away at this stuff. My journey started literally 4 decades ago, right? When I realized that business particularly, and people looking for successful careers, were missing something. They were following rote. Everything was driven by textbooks or common thought, and it wasn't cutting it. I mean, if you'll remember the telecom world back then, it was transforming itself from monopoly to a competitive world. And my conclusion was, and I worked in that company as a rate analyst, an entry-level position. My conclusion then was we weren't ready. And so I started on this breakaway notion of creating differences between ourselves and the bad guys out there in the marketplace called competitors. And so I started really young, figuring out that copying others wasn't good enough. Following traditional practices just simply wasn't going to cut it. And I started to think about being different back then. And it's been just an amazing, rewarding journey for me, James, personally as well as professionally. And the thing that really excites me is probably, I wrote my first book in 2009, right? So 13 years ago, I started formally writing, and the topic is probably more relevant today than it ever was, because we've got so much blending in, we got so much fitting in, everybody copies everybody. It's really hard if you're a consumer to figure out who to buy from, because everybody looks the same. It's ridiculous. It's mediocre. It's actually intellectually dishonest in terms of the marketing profession to propagate that kind of stuff. And I can be hard on my own profession, all right? I left as a CMO. So I'm going to be tough on marketing. It's not cutting it as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, here I am, a few years older, much wiser, I hope, with a lot that I'm quite frankly, totally prepared to share with people. And I do spend a lot of time with young professionals because they're confused. They're confused because reality and academic professional schooling is like this. And it's hard for them to break away and find a way to actually lead a rewarding and successful life from a career point of view. So I tend to want to give back to them a lot.
One of the things that I really, this just poked at my interest. I'm a dad of 2 children, 2 teenagers. One is near adult. Rowan is near 18, so he's 17. Harrison's 15, and so you're a grandpa. And when I listen to your narrative, how you chose and how you keep choosing to show up as someone who stays relevant, not through the lens of fear, but just through the desire. Like you've got this libido. You got this, libido for life. And it is, honestly, it's contagious. Like when I heard how and I'm going to say aging, Roy, so I hope you don't mind, but when you would language how you're graciously and gracefully aging and how you stay relevant to the younger generation, my friend, it just made me happy. That's who I see myself as a dad. I'm 46, but that's the challenge that I put into my life. And I know a lot of my listeners are, don't find it too terribly interesting to ride out into the sunset thinking, how is it that all of who we once were, the newness, the sparkle, the ignition that we felt, that we're somehow, apparently society says we're supposed to quieten this down and supposed to start being like, no, I think that's wrong. That different is wrong. And here you come along and you just rip it open. You're like, different? Tell me how. And so you told me a few stories about your grandkids and your kids and how you converse and how you draw these new things that are happening today. And you're like, oh, what is that? And you get really curious about it. And I think within that, like you said, these younger people, they're kind of torn, the education system, everything is just, we're not quite sure. I think what's beautiful, Roy, is you're not throwing yourself into the basket and becoming a greater problem. your demographic, your age group, and you're one of, and I hope many, but you're an encourager to the others your age to draw people. What do you think it is about you? Just go into like the nuance of your life. What is it? You were like the CMO. What is it about you that has you so fascinated with engaging and enjoying and promoting the difference that we all are and that we have within us?
Well, I mean, first of all, I guess I reject out of hand the notion that chronological impairment leads to mental uh, issues, and that people are destined to, quote, grow old graciously. To me, that's a narrative that's quite frankly propagated by another set of demographics. And so, quite frankly, James, it's bullshit. Quite as far as I'm concerned, I think I'm smarter now than I ever was. I have more energy now than I ever did, and that energy level is actually created because of the excitement around my journey to be different. That's such an empowering dimension, okay, of life that young people particularly are missing completely, and it's not their fault because they've been taught to memorize the formulas. They've been taught to color inside the lines. They've been taught not to stand out and draw attention to themselves. It's for some innate reason that's wrong. I'm audacious, always have been. I've always been attracting criticism because I look for ways to stand out. I look for ways to separate myself. I talk differently. I speak probably better than most people in their lives in terms of communication skills. And that's not by accident. I created those and I honed them. Okay. And so what makes me different is I'm on a very exciting journey. I reject most common narratives. I find them repugnant. And I try and create a narrative that everybody can buy into. And you know, it's interesting. I can talk to my 21-year-old granddaughter who's going to University of Victoria, and I can talk to her about her studies, and I can probably relate to her better than most people can, because I've been there, I've done that. I can challenge the academics that she's being presented with. I can challenge the content. I can give her different perspectives because my background is so broad and deep. That's all it is, right? My grandkids are my life. I am the be different papa. I do things differently to stay relevant to them, and it's not an accident. I do it very, very strategically. As an example, I mean, my background historically is Norwegian. My grandparents were born and raised in Norway, and they came here to Roslyn actually, and started a life here, and I was born here. So it's always been for me and my grandkids an objective of mine to kind of dip them in the Norwegian culture, even though I wasn't born and raised there. And so we've taken all of them to Norway, my wife and I, on cruises, etc. And so the relationship tends to have been developed around the concept of the troll. The troll is a very, very incredible beast in Norwegian mythology, and I keep it alive. I started a club with my grandkids called the Trollites Club. Now, this was a very simple club, right, where the five of us, would get together in a homemade tent in our basement, and we would have a Trollites meeting. I'm the president, of course. My vice president is my oldest granddaughter. And we would say, okay, what are we going to talk about? Well, Papa, let's talk about marching to England. Okay, let's do that. Let's go. So we just had this incredible dynamic set up. And they remember everything about that experience to this day. It tells you something, okay, that we're missing. We're missing experiences. And I translate that into business. One of the biggest things that are missing in business, James, is a creation of memories, because organizations don't see them in the business of creating memories. Try and tell me that amazing customer service has nothing to do with experiences. It has everything to do with experiences. And so, yeah, I try and look for ways of staying relevant, and that's hard work, man. It's hard work because it's energy drawing. You got to keep your energy level up. You got to keep your passion up. You got to keep your perspective up. You got to be looking for ways to make a difference. Looking for ways to make a difference. not propagate the same old bullshit that's out there, because there's a lot of it. You don't do that. I'm a contrarian. I will go 180 to anything.
Love it.
And find something that's redeemable in that. And most businesses should actually try that, because it's a hell of a source of innovation, by the way. You know,
well,
so,
it keeps you young. speaking of
I don't know. You know what? I got to be honest with you, man. I don't keep track of that stuff. To me, that's like a barometer. I mean, well, I don't know who's keeping track. I'm sure as hell not keeping track. My family isn't keeping track.
Well,
and
just
for
the record, when I say keeps you looking young, what I'm referring to, for those of you that are observing, if you're listening to this on iTunes, if you want to tune in to the YouTube, have a view of this guy, watch his energy. He's lost his hair. Who cares about that shit, right? What I'm saying, it keeps you looking young. You're sparky. You're there. You're on. Hey, Roy, question for you. What strategically do you need to own about yourself that when you radically come up with a different, or when a radically new intuition comes up, what strategically do you need to own about yourself in that moment? And I'm talking about not just a different as in like the common different, but when something comes alive and you're like, holy smokes, that's different. And you almost feel like, yeah, you know what, society may reject this. They may even reject me for this. What strategically? I know I got you. I know you're laughing. You're going, well, you're like, I don't know if you're going to say F that, but honestly, what strategically do you need to own? And the reason I ask this is for those people that are listening and tuning in, they're wanting to know little clues from this young 87, 105-year-old man. Okay, go ahead.
So the first thing you have to be guided by is the worth of the idea. Okay, that's the focus. Like, I find there are too many people worried about the potential noise. You know, it's like my wife and I will have a disagreement, an argument about what we're going to do with the lottery winnings that we might get. So where are you going to spend the money? Blah 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 blah. And all of a sudden, we have a bit of a debate, which can turn into some conflict about how we're going to spend money from something that we probably will never, ever win. And so I think, my observation is most people have been taught to shy away. Okay, so they shy away as opposed to leaning in. For me, leaning in, that's not a bad line. Feed that back to me later. I'm going to put that on one of my Instagram posts. Oh yeah, I'm into Instagram and TikTok and all that kind of. Anyways, that's another story. But what happens to me in the moment is, like, I am so focused on the worth of the idea that I don't hear anything else. It's almost like you go in, right? Like they talk about this in meditation. And I don't know if it's meditation or not. I've never meditated, but I tell you what, if I'm locked and loaded on an idea, I hear nothing. It's quiet around me, because all I want to do is figure out how to breathe life into this idea that I think has worth. Okay, now I'm a very execution-oriented dude. I'm not a guy that sits and ponders and pontificates over the economic value or the intellectual value of an idea. Because for me, the intellect leads to nothing unless it's coupled with fire.
True. Yeah.
Right? And passion.
Yeah.
And so what happens to me, I go quiet. I say, okay, is the worth of this notion so big that it's going to kick my execution juices into gear and we're going to get rocking? And if the answer to that is yes, I'm immediately in the execution mode. I'm not in the, oh my gosh, how will others think about this mode? I'm not in the, oh my goodness, what narratives will I cause a problem with? Because quite frankly, James, it doesn't matter to me. The worth of the idea is worth going through the pain and agony, all right, that couples greatness to get something executed. And I'm an executor. I'm a doer.
What do you think comes before someone can radically decipher whether or not the idea is worth much or little? Who needs to, I don't need to draw you or towards something, but really right. So because us listeners, we're hearing you come across as a confident human being. Go ahead. Yeah. what is it? Who is it? Perhaps who is it that needs to consider the worth of whatever is flowing through this thing, the brain, the heart, the being?
The person who owns it.
There you go.
Okay. The person
Owning
that
it.
owns it.
Owning
You need to be, for me, look at, I've got decades of experience, right? So I've got a whole raft. I can go to my safe and pull out all sorts of criteria. Okay. But that's not the point. If I don't do that, by the way, I don't do that sort of like I would call kind of like, formal evaluation. Look at it. If you have an idea that lights your fire, that you actually think will benefit another human being or a bunch of them, then you owe it to yourself and you owe it to society generally to pursue it.
Spot on.
Don't get caught up in the backdrop noise, okay, that will be promulgated by all the narratives out there. And by the way, James, it's getting worse. There are more narratives today than ever. I mean, it's not as simple a world, and I'm not being critical. That's just the way it is. However, you need to push through this, and for one simple reason, we need you to. You ever read Here's to the Crazy Ones by Steve Jobs? Reread that. Every morning when you get up, you read it, because it's the weird people who choose to be world. I'm not weird. I'm not talking about DNA related stuff. People who choose to be weird, who choose to be different, who choose to be crazy. Those are the people that will not be repelled, that will not be put down, that will change the world. And so the simple answer to your question is, stop thinking about it. If it feels good, try it. Hey, listen, what could happen? Well, the worst thing is it doesn't work out. Big deal. Do you know how many basketball games Jordan lost for the Bulls? Hundreds. Do you think he stopped shooting because he lost a few games? Come on.
Oh, he wasn't born with the ability?
No. We are so taught to be risk averse. We are so taught to, oh my God, be careful not to hurt somebody's feelings. I mean, it's almost as bad. I'm going to step on some toes here. It's almost as bad as the education system saying, oh, we're going to get rid of letter grades because it upsets some people that can't achieve a high letter grade. So what we're going to do is focus on, are they trying hard? Okay, but there has to be a measurement of trying hard. It has to be, because you know what? Those people walk out of school into the cold business world, the cold career world, and guess what happens? They get compared to everybody else. My conclusion, be great and be different.
Isn't it fascinating? Isn't it fascinating how if we choose to feel threatened about the truth, right? If I work really hard at school and I come out with a C or a B, not an A, I don't know if they still have letter grades like that, but
yes, they do.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, they do.
You're clearly more relevant than I am. Anyway, there you go. No, this is wonderful. So if we feel threatened that we get the letter grade of which we had less interest in, ask yourself, where are we ever seeing things clearly and for what they are? Where are we ever seeing? And then we have an idea. So, millennials, they have these thoughts, these ideas, like we all do. We think, hey, listen, is this worth anything? If we can't see clearly first and be okay with the reality, I got a B in school, where are we going to see clearly the reality? We got it all mixed up. It's all just swirling about. It's just not making a difference. So here's the question for you. And before I ask you the question, I'm going to tee it up with this. For part of my life, and so I'm 46, roughly till the age of, I would say 34, 35, I remember thinking I was nuts. Just thinking, this is my problem. If I wasn't so nuts, and I'd already succeeded in business in a few different areas, but my life wasn't so fun. It was kind of miserable. It's kind of hellish, to be honest. I had the car, the house, the vacation, the investments, blah, 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 all that useless, great stuff. Bank account looked okay, but inside I felt miserable. And I'll never forget, I went to this event and we were supposed to break through a limiting belief. And I remember thinking to myself, well, what's a belief that I have inside of myself that's actually currently a solution to how I feel. Or what is the solution? What is the thing that sets me up for the solution of? And I thought, well, the solution, I feel like I have to be nuts, which I reject in myself. And so I rejected being nuts, but I feel like I have to be like that. So it was like a conflict. Then I thought to myself, if I were to break through, what could I break through? And I'm like, so I wrote on the board, we just broke through boards at the time. I wrote on the boards, I am nuts. And I broke through, when I broke through, I wrote on the back, of course I'm nuts. That's why I love who I am. That's why I love who I am. So it's the reason to. Let's take this story and let's merge it into audacious leadership. When I think about be different or be dead, talk to us, all of us, what is audacious leadership? Because there's a point in your life and a point in my life, and take yourself back to the point when you were like, I'm nuts, I'm crazy, if that happened for you, whatever it was. And then you go, instead of me trying to just hold that within this container, I'm now going to lead with this. Take us back to like the company that you helped, or take us back to any story. Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, the big driver in my life, very, very early on in my career, was basically the change that was going on in the telecom business, and what the business had to do to transform itself into a highly effective, competitive business.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that point, my conclusion was that we needed to transform several things about who we were. One is we had to get away from thinking about ourselves as the only game in town to being a nimble, intense competitor in a highly intensely competitive world. We had to get away from the notion of taking orders to marketing our products and services. We had to get away from promulgating internal policies to customers to serving them and asking, how can we help? We had to get away from thinking about ourselves as an engineering company to a company that was marketing driven and customer focused. And we had to create a culture that led us away from voice services into data services. And that's when I was asked to actually start our journey at that time into the data and internet world. So those were the drivers that started me going. My conclusion, and it led me to this, in retrospect, the audacious tag that I apply to myself, which is more about breaking away than anything else. Okay, audacious in an adjectival sense describes what I did to break away. Okay, like looking at individuals instead of mass markets, creating things and not copying things, right? Doing practical, simple things, not listening to textbooks, being the only one that does what we do as opposed to being one of many, looking at differences in the marketplace, not similarities, paying more attention to the front line and not your boss, micromanaging as opposed to relentless delegation, where that's nothing more than abdication. And so my brand ended up in this juxtaposition thing, going from tradition to what I believed we needed to survive. And that's the audacious breakaway side. Audacious is a very important word to me because it correctly describes who I am. Because it talks about being bold. It talks about doing things that with wild abandon. It talks about failing a lot, right? It talks about capturing the hearts of people because of your simplicity and your honesty. It talks about simple concepts like integrity, okay? I mean, all the things that relate to defining your human side of leadership, which my observation isn't practiced enough, James. It just isn't. And so I found it was easy for me to get people to go with me. It wasn't complicated, and they got it. I mean, the people who looked at, well, why are you doing a cut the crap program? What is that all about? They wanted it to be sounding complicated, like, well, we're eliminating the non-strategic activities. And I said, no, we're not. We're getting rid of the stupid stuff we do. Okay. Well, people don't like that, but the frontline folks, they love it. And so it started then. And I just been, that's just part of who I am. I don't pay attention. I don't pay attention to the noise. I mean, one of the biggest problems with young people today, and I, with all due respect, when I say problems, I'm not finding fault. One of the big, we can couch it up, okay? We can call them challenges. We can couch, it's a problem. It's that people have a hard time focusing on 2 or 3 things that really matter, whether it's in their life, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in their career, whether it's in business, whether it's in your job. Because we've been taught that to-do lists, right, need to be created. No, because you cannot do 10 things at once, James. You may think you can, but you can't. Okay, so my experience is I had it Roy's rule of 3. If I asked somebody what their priorities were in my office and they said they gave me 10 things, I'd throw them out. I'd say, come back to me when you understand what the critical things are, you see, because it's easy. It's easy to come up with 10 things to do, right? What's hard is to come up with the top 3 things that will make a real difference to the performance of the organization.
Listeners, try this on. Try focusing on 10 things at once. Try thinking about 3 things at once. Now, you can't think of 3 things at once, but you can hold 3 things. Keep going, Roy. I love it.
You can do 3 things. Okay, that's the point. Like a big part of the audacious or breakaway claim or tag or leadership aspect that I created is this whole issue about execution. Look at audacious leadership has got basically 4 planks to it. One is be different. We've been talking about that. Mm-hmm. But the second is executing. Execution, focus on getting it done, not pondering about it, not pontificating about it. And 3 things is absolutely critical to that. If you can figure out a way to boil what you have to do down to 3 things, which clearly are related to the strategy you're trying to achieve, you've made a breakthrough and you'll actually get those done. And so what I would say to people is, look, what if, because I had 10,000 people in this organization, what if all 10,000 of us did the same thing? Can you imagine? Can you imagine the power that we would have if we were all focused on the same thing and we all had 3 things, 3 roles that we could play extremely well to actually pull that off? I mean, just magic happens, okay? But again, we're told, I mean, case studies that MBAs take, I mean, there's just all sorts of non-focused stuff going on there. And so people
talk about distraction and oftentimes not realizing that the word traction comes from the word distraction. Distraction is away from the traction that we crave. Singular focus, monofocus versus, split focus. Think about this versus we're supposed to have focus that can be all over the map, and we should be able to lock and load and to your point on execution, we should be able to execute on all of them. But let's be honest, the hands and the heart and the mind can actually only focus on a singular, what's directly in front of you, within grasp, what is right there, what's directly in front. That's what it, but before we talk more about execution, and I love how you're setting this up, if you don't mind, I just got a thought here. Why do people have such a difficult time differentiating their business, and what examples have you seen of good and bad approaches? Go ahead.
Boom, love it. Well, yeah, it's kind of ironic in a way, and look at I've said this for 13 years, James. Okay, so when I was 13 years younger, nothing has changed. It's like I had this thing that says you would think in a world that is more and more and more competitive, where more customers have options, where the competition is more intense, you would think that organizations would get better at differentiating themselves from their competition, right? I mean, we're much smarter than that. The reality is they haven't. Let me just kind of take you sort of down this. My observation is there are a couple of things at play here that are working against clear competitive differentiation. And the first one is what I call claptrap dominates. Claptrap. Yeah, claptrap are words that may make people feel good, but they're absolutely meaningless. Like better, best, number one, market leader, premium services, most compelling, great tasting. All of these words are claptrap because they don't mean anything to the person who is trying to figure out whether they should buy. You see, competitive claims, James, should answer the question, why should I buy from you as opposed to your competitor? By me telling you I provide the best customer service isn't really going to cut it. That's claptrap. And they are abound out there. All you got to let me give you a couple examples. Here's a coffee company that says they offer the best coffee and espresso drinks for consumers who want premium ingredients and perfection every time.
I don't know if Starbucks was the one I just played.
Here's another company that says we work hard every day to make ourselves the most respected service brand. Okay, words like most respected, premium, they're claptrap. They don't mean anything. Okay, so that's one of the things that's kind of like preventing it. But the second one, which is probably, I just got to tell you, this just kills me, is what I say, aspirations contaminate. Okay, so you got claptrap dominates, you got aspirations contaminate. These are helium-filled claims at the 10,000 foot level that are meaningless, that can't be proven, and more importantly, no one can be held accountable for achieving them. Let me give you two examples. Here's a company that says we're in business to save our home planet. Here's another company that says we're in business to inspire humanity, both in the air and on the ground. Now, look, I mean, I'm not suggesting that somehow somebody might kind of get a direction out of that, but do you really think that informs execution? Do you really think that tells a frontline person what to do tomorrow morning when they go into work? No. And so you got claptrap and you got aspiration. So Roy, if you're so smart, what's the solution? Thank you. Never thought you'd ask. The solution.
Hey, wait a minute. I'm leading the show. I'll ask you the question, but I just asked you the question. So go ahead.
So the solution gets back to our conversation about be different. It's how can we incorporate this notion of being different in a competitive claim? Now, I've spent a long time working on a concept that I created myself. It's called the only statement. Okay, the only statement says, we're the only ones that, blah, blah, blah. Like, let me give you an example. I have an only statement as an individual. It says, Roy is the only author, entrepreneur, and executive leader who delivers practical and proven, audacious, unheard of ways to produce high-performing businesses and successful careers. There are business clients that I work with where I try and get them to develop their only statement because it is the basis for their competitive claim. Mm-hmm. I'm working with an association. You should check these guys out because you're close. It's called the North Delta Business Association. It's a startup, and I'm on their board. Happy to help. This is what we've actually created for them, and it's about a week old, right? It says the North Delta Business Association is the only team that, one, links you to other businesses, two, connects you with experienced and knowledgeable people to help you grow your business, and three, constantly challenges you to do things differently. That's the only statement. But the interesting thing about that is there's no claptrap in there. There's no aspirations in there. It's very specific as we can get it, right? And it either is true or it's not true. It either exists or it doesn't. It's binary.
Now I'm going to poke you a little bit here. Could you argue that the word different can be seen as a claptrap? And how could, right?
No,
and so
claptrap, I didn't say that. Claptrap expressions are like better, best, number one, leader, premium.
So what I'm poking is, could we make the inference that when a word has been used and overused, okay, when a word's been overused, that all of a sudden it becomes claptrap stuff? Because that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. Because different, when I hear different, how do you decipher? Because here's ultimately,
stay with the question. Stay with the question.
No, I absolutely love it. How do you actually decipher the uniqueness and the different that different is? So specifically, skewing into that beneath the surface thing and
I
then
got
getting
it.
that.
I got it. It's a really, really insightful question. First of all, I wish I had the problem of having to argue that there's not enough use of the word different. That there, in other words, I wish I had to argue that and defend that it's being overused. Okay, the reality is it's not being overused. Better and best, the claptrap stuff is being overused. So to your point, though, okay, and this is the process that I go through. Once we have an only claim, it's not just the word different in it. It's like the various concepts in that statement need to be what I call unpacked. So you got to go through an exercise called unpacking the only. For example, in the case of the North Delta Business Association, the last point says the only one that consistently challenges you to do things differently. When I unpack that, I state specifically what we are going to do to live up to that statement. Okay, those are the proof points. And they, by the way, they also drive the priorities that we're going to go on in order to do it. And so, yes, you have to get a little more specific and granular. That's part of the process. But what a wonderful process, trying to get clarity around your competitive claim as opposed to saying we're happy because we're better. I say you're not. The quest is not to be better; it's to be only. Your quest is not to be the best; it's to be the only one.
Well, the only
your quest is not to be number one; it's to be the only one. Okay.
And the reason that I poke there is not because, and it's like you said brilliantly, you eloquently stated that saying the word different, that's not been overused yet. Like that's not really an overuse. We wish we could have that problem. That quality of challenge hasn't arrived yet. But you know, here's the thing: when I say but, however, there is a segment of the market. So, for example, those of us who own what we do, and we already say we're different. Now let's lump all of those into one pool, and then how do we differentiate between? Because we want to make it easy for people to say yes to the invite that they feel most drawn to. And I love exactly how you language it. And I'm gonna just paraphrase, perhaps even just to give another approach. But it seems to me what you're talking about, and I love this so much, and this is one of the things I love about you. You're not lazy. You got to unpack the number one thing. You got to unpack the only thing. You got to unpack that. You can't just use a word that apparently the market says, use this, and then leave it at that. You have to actually give evidence for it. Have you ever realized, listeners, when somebody says something and it's a compliment versus they spot evidence? Two completely different things. What Roy is talking about is like, listen, if you follow Roy around and you see what he's about, you're going to see evidence of what he says the only thing about himself on. You're going to find evidence of this. So living authentically, you're literally setting yourself up for the focal point of your life. You're saying, this is how I live. This is how I will live. This is me. This is all of me. And guess what? You're not lazy. You don't go online and say, what's the number one marketing word used today? Well, if it's different, I'll use that word. No. You start getting deeper. Claptrap. Aspirations, my goodness. Again, claptrap, meaning nothing, meaning nothing to people. So I love it. I love it. You have anything to add to that before? And I have.
Oh, I always have stuff to add to it.
So that was a bad question.
the proof point. You always have to be looking for proof points. Okay, like if you have an only, I mean, my teaching is it's always a draft. Okay, because to consider it permanent would be an admission that the world isn't changing. And of course it is. So it's always a draft. Now, people are uncomfortable with that because they've been told you need to complete this to move on to something else. No, you don't. You live your only and you tinker with it on the run. Okay. But there's two questions you have to ask. First of all, is your only statement relevant? Does it address something that people care about? I'm not talking about need. I'm talking about care about. Okay. Now caring about it talks at the cravings, value, benefits, lusting experiences level, visceral level, not pedantic needs. Okay. So is it relevant? Does it address something that people care about? And secondly, is it true? Do we consistently deliver that? So what I do is I go and test this stuff and get clients to test it. We test it with customers. We test it with frontline people. And we come back and say, okay, let's drive a stake in the ground. Let's go with this. Now, in the case of my only, the proof point of my only statement is I was part of a team that took a company in its early stages to $1 billion in sales. Boom, problem solved. Now argue with me that the only isn't relevant and that isn't true. You see, you got to get it. So I keep saying to people, this is not about using flowery language. This is not about going to the thesaurus and coming up with a bunch of words, right? It isn't that. It's being really, really specific on what you and only you do for someone else. You need to do that. You need to do the work.
It seems to me like what you're doing is you're telling your client, you're making it easier for your clients to tell them exactly what to look for to stress test against your authenticity. You're saying you want to look for something, you want to look to see who I am, watch here, watch here. And so it appears to me that you got to be about honest when you create this thing, because people will look there. And if you haven't developed that, my friend, you're going to get shredded. The market's going to chew you out and spit you out so quick.
You're absolutely right. And you need to have thick skin, and you need to be really, really regimented in terms of, I mean, look at, I have seen companies claim that they're the only company doing something that's irrelevant. Now that is a definition of instant death. Like, I'm the only one that does something, but nobody cares about it. Let me give you an example. There's a radio station in Greater Vancouver that has an only statement, and they say, we're the only ones that give you traffic and weather on the ones. Okay, meaning every 10 minutes, at the 1 minute and the 11th minute, they give a traffic report and weather. There's another radio station in Greater Vancouver that's all weather and traffic all the time. They don't have an only statement for that. They just do it. And I've written about this on my blog, is that the one that claims they're only at delivering information on the ones are totally irrelevant, because who cares about getting the information on the ones when I can go to another radio station and get it instantaneously all the time. So when you come up with an only, you better make sure that that it's addressing something that people care about.
Talk to me about this. Talk to me about this. So one of the things that has become apparent to all of us that are connected to the internet, which is by and large most of my listeners, if not all. Actually, my listeners are connected, because unless they're connected, they're not here, right? When we stress test, are we the only one? If we'd be looking at this literally, the only one, you know how much time we'd have to spend to see if we actually are the only one doing this? It would be virtually impossible. What are you exactly talking about? And so we're going deeper and deeper and deeper, and we're taking people deeper and deeper and deeper away from thinking that just choose something simply. You got to create and language, the only thing that when your clients observe and stress test to see and stress test your authenticity, that they go like, actually, they are the only one, and it matters that they're the only one. How do you create something and in line with authentic marketing? Authentic marketing, because it's very easy to say I'm the only one that creates a brown drink. People apparently are just going to come to me, and that's not true, because Pepsi and Cola do brown drinks and Starbucks does brown, but if I make the statement, that doesn't mean that people are going to come. And if people come to me, that makes me feel like a piece of garbage as a business owner. It's not authentic marketing. So how do you create the only one thing? Go deeper.
So we got to take a step back, because the question really is, what informs the only statement? Because the only statement isn't created in a vacuum. The only statement is created as a competitive claim targeted at the customers that you've chosen to serve. So it's not something that's splashed on the marketplace. Okay, it has a specific frame of reference, and that frame of reference is a set of customers that in your strategic game plan, which we don't have time to go through that right now, but it's a very disciplined process, talks about who do you want to serve? Who do you want to serve targets the people that you want to serve. It's what do they value, not what does a mass market value. And so if the customer segment that you chose to serve values brown drinks, and that's something that you do, then it should be part of your only. In other words, you get guided by what they value, not what you think you do. Okay, now getting at this, it's not all that complicated. It's like, what do we as an executive team know about the people that we've chosen to serve? Let's go deep. Let's involve frontline people. Let's involve marketing people as well, and try and figure that out. Now, we'll get smarter as time goes by. We will learn more. But at the outset, right, in order to get executing imperfection really well, let's get going and let's come up with something, okay, that is meaningful. And we're going to test it, right? We're going to test it, and then we're going to refine it on what I call planning on the run. We're going to refine it on the run. Now, the unpacking thing isn't on the board. The unpacking thing is reserved for conversation. When somebody says, Roy, what do you mean by practical and proven ways? I know what that means, and I will answer that. Roy, what do you mean by unheard of ways? I can answer that. I'm not going to include that in the statement because it makes it too long and people can't take that.
So actually, Roy, do you mind, just for the audience, I think this would be a great, and I wrote this down here. Let's unpack your statement. Like, so I'm gonna read it. Roy is the only author, entrepreneur, and executive leader who delivers practical, proven, audacious, unheard of ways to produce high-performing business and successful careers. Choose a word there, and let's just unpack it. Unheard of ways, because again, who is to say that's?
We could. That's an easy one.
Why don't we just do? Let's do the easy one first.
We're going to do two of them. We're going to do two of them.
So start with the unheard of one.
Okay, audacious, unheard of ways. You'll notice that that's in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that what I do is I point to my work and say, nobody else out there talks about killing dumb rules. Nobody else out there talks about hiring for goosebumps. Nobody else out there has got a strategic game plan that's created by answering 3 questions. Nobody else out there talks about cut the crap. And so I can talk about the specifics, and people will look at that and go, yeah, I mean, I've not heard about that anywhere. I said, okay, boom, it's unheard of. Mm-hmm. The real thing is practical improvement, proven, because what separates me from other guests, I would say, with other consultants, with other quote experts, is the fact that you can trust what I have to say because I've done it. I am not a theoretician. I'm a practitioner. I'm a guy that's been around a long time, leading people and doing things. And I can point to that, okay? And the summation, the accumulation of all of that is, took a startup to $1 billion in sales. Boom, proof point. There are a lot of people who will say, well, okay, here's my name and I got 15 letters. And by the way, I'm not slamming these people. That's just what they do. 15 letters. I don't have one letter behind I don't have one letter behind my name because I don't believe the academic pedigree separates me from Dick. What separates me, and you can tell I'm quite passionate about this, but what separates me from other people is what I've done, not what I know. What I've done, what I've learned, what I'm now wanting to pass on to other people in hopes that they can do that. Okay, so I mean, I can talk careers, and I'll talk about careers and at length because I take the same principles and I apply them to career development. I'm the only one that does that. I mean, I'm the only one that talks about you need to get your foxes in line. I'm the only one that talks about the magic question in your career, and why so many people fail is they don't ask themselves the magic question. And so I can unpack mine, and what I want to do is not to satisfy my ego, but as an example of what can be done. And James, it doesn't matter who you are and what you do. You have this in you. You just need to start thinking about it and working hard at it. And it is hard work.
Well, thanks for going toe to toe with me. This is not a competitive, this is a collaborative space. The reason I poke is sometimes it's easy for people to be like, okay, I've had enough about this trying to get somewhere. I'm just going to now claim it and declare it. And then they start declaring these silly things. But then at the end of the day, it's not congruent within their values and how they live their life. And so when we brought you onto the show, again, I began to unpack and present to the audience who you were. And you're somebody who stays relative with, so you stay relative with your grandkids, with your children, with the updating of social media. I mean, TikTok, it's 76, amazing, right? I'm not on TikTok. I don't know if I ever will be, but what you're saying is you're just there, right? And so at the end of the day, you come on board and I poke you a bit on this. Hey, listen, the only one concept. And listeners, if you hear what he's doing, if you listen to who this man is and how he's lived his life, the evidence, he comes online and the proof point of all of it is 1 billion in sales. That's the proof point. So it feels authentic to him to promote himself like this, and he can stand on his 2 feet. If you observe, didn't really feel threatened. He just said, well, I'm the only one that does this. And he has plenty of things to back it up. Evidence, 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 evidence. If you make declaration in your only thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Roy, I don't want to speak into your narrative, but you got to have proof points. If you don't have proof points, these are proof points. These are not your only thing. These are the things you want to be about, perhaps, but you got to have the proof point. Because if not, what are you going to do when your client is looking to back up and, again, stress test your authenticity? They're looking for what you're saying you're about, and they can't find it anywhere. Chances are they won't be able to find it if you haven't done it before, because this is not of your life. This is not going to show up when you're under load. And guess when clients look to see who you really are? When you're under load, not when everything is going well, and then see who you are. That's not really who you are. I mean, it's a version of who you are. You want to really see who I am? Catch me on a bad moment. I don't really have bad days anymore. I have like a bad 20, 30. I allow myself a bad 20, 30 seconds, and then I go somewhere different. But see who I am in a moment like that. Then you're going to really know what informs James, or what James's values are.
Yeah. So just a couple of points. Good question. First of all, we have to be realistic about what we do in terms of creating the only statement. I'm not suggesting for a minute it's a slam dunk, and nor am I suggesting that we do it so casually so as to turn the word different into claptrap. Okay, there's a discipline associated with this, and I can help. There's no one else that can help. Okay, boom, you got it. It's Roy. He's available. gmail.com. Okay, so we start off by saying, okay, let's see if we can get it 50% right. Because the important thing at the end of the day is to get something that we believe in, and we're going to try it, live with it, and adjust it as we learn more. What we're not going to do is study it for 15 months. We are simply not going there. Why? Because audacious leadership is all about execution. And so we're going to get it just about right. And we're going to go out there and we're going to learn and we're going to change. And it will always be a draft. It will always be a draft. Okay. But we'll make it better and better and better. And you know what's going to happen? I've seen this happen. I mean, competitors start to look at you and they go, what the hell's that? And they start to try and figure it out. Now, of course, I'm not ever going to sacrifice a customer and a good friend, right? So they can go, try and figure it out themselves, which they never will. So we got a really good head start, like 4 decades kind of thing. But live with it, change it, learn about it. I mean, I have learned so much about myself by practicing my only statement. I have to tell you, I mean, I just, like every day, something, when I'm talking to you guys and something just goes, oh, boom, where did that come from? I got that, and I got to write it down now. Because I may forget it. But be patient with yourself, James, is what I'm trying to say. Be patient. There's no silver bullets in this stuff, even though we may have been taught, that the Hail Mary is there. It ain't. It's just 100 miles of really hard work. But as a resource, okay, I offer my blog. I blog every week on bedifferentorbedead.com. I know you're going to eventually go here anyways, but I'm going to say it now. I've got all sorts of resources available around the only statement because it's so important. So I just suggest to your listeners, if this excites you, and I hope it does, go check it out. Go get some more resources from my website. And by all means, send me an email. I got people sending me emails on their own, James. Roy, what do you think about this? Okay, not a bad start. Let's start working on that. We go back and forth, and eventually get something that they are happy with, that meets some sort of, criteria.
It seems like, and like for all of us listeners, who doesn't have a little too much noise in their life? We like to hear things, but could it be that we're the creators of much noise that is distorting noise, that is distraction, taking us away from noise? And it's like, when we finally quieten it down, and what does it require to get quiet from within? But Roy's throwing down, I love this, the challenge of, ask yourself, listeners, what are you the only person that delivers X on a consistent basis? Not what you want to deliver, meaning don't go look online, see what the market is currently buying or what they're trying to sell. And don't position yourself to what you'd like to sell so that you can nicely match what the market's buying. That's manipulation. I think when you focus on the only of what you bring, you're going to want to start off with not what do I bring in the only way that I really have to work hard at bringing. It's like, what is of me? It's just in there. Like when you listen to Roy and I have this in common. Like I got this red thing behind me here and it represents fire for me in my life. Roy's like, listen, you got to be ignited towards something. There's got to be something that when you feel it, you're like, oh, there's a spark and it lights you up. And it makes you go different. But what's really unique, and Roy, you're challenging us, and I love this tremendously. What's the only thing? So not just different. Oh, I think it might be different here. This might work, whatever. It's like, what's the only thing that I do? What makes me like radically different? What makes me unique? Like, so getting deeper into what makes me nuts. Like for me, I used to think I was nuts, and that was the thing that took me apparently away from fulfillment. Now I own my nutsness because I'm like, there's so much stuff going on in here, whatever it ends up being, but you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. The only thing. And again, if you're going to be about anxious striving, you're just creating a bunch of noise. But why not instead listen to what keeps calling your name every day? You hear Roy when he gets out of bed, when I get out of bed, when you get out of bed, listener, what can't you let go of? What keeps coming? What keeps finding you? What keeps finding you? And you know what? The world probably doesn't have the exact same thing because the world does their own thing, but you are the one that was chosen for this. So if you own this, if you own that thing and be like, I'm the only person that does this, and you own that. So Roy, I love that you were going to bring something to the table. I love it. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think we are subjects of noise because we haven't learned to focus. Mm-hmm. If you can't focus, then you're letting a whole bunch of other stuff in, right? That's going to be influential and prevent you from moving a certain way. Mm-hmm. So it's always been helpful for me to be really clear on what I'm trying to do, mm-hmm. and almost, going within in terms of going after that. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I will say is to your listeners is this only piece of work is probably revolutionary, and it needs to be treated that way in order to gain some momentum. Let's not let doing things different become claptrap. Let's start using only as the way to describe ourselves and what we do, even if it's
in the most authentic ways. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the be different thing leads to you're the only ones. I mean, are you old enough to remember the Grateful Dead, James?
I've heard of them.
The Grateful Dead
music group.
Okay, right? Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of here. Okay, just a bit of Roy. The Grateful Dead were the most successful touring rock band in history. They were more successful than any other band. Okay, they had a guitar player, the leader of the band, a guy by the name of Jerry Garcia, and they used to do outdoor gigs, etc., etc. Garcia, back in the day, had this nailed. He was actually, I think, in terms of my resources, he was actually, and I stumbled upon this guy well when I was all into my only journey. He said something that nobody else has quoted him on, but me. Okay, I'm the only one that quoted it. And he said, you don't want to be merely the best of the best. You want to be the only ones that do what you do. Boom. This is in a rock band. This was in a musical world, which led him, if you unpack that only statement, what you discovered was they never gave new deals, special deals to attract new customers. They always gave their loyal fans the best deals first. This was a band that had this incredible paper mania about communications with their fans because the internet didn't exist. There was no email. They were prolific in terms of communicating with their fans. This was the band that built a stadium and infrastructure of recording equipment to allow their fans to record their music at a time when the rest of the world denied any capability to have their music recorded because of patents. Talk about being enlightened. So if you look at the Grateful Dead, they've written some really cool books, by the way. To your listeners, go check out Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. They are amazing. And they're such simple thing. It's just like Lady Gaga, by the way, is another one who's written some amazing, there's been some amazing work done around her and the simple things that she did to differentiate herself. That's what I'm suggesting. There's examples out there of people who have done incredible, and they've never been recognized for being the only one. That way, they've expressed it other ways, but it's quite amazing. Every business, there's an element, successful business, there's an element of that. If you happen to be large enough and you got scale and scope economies, and maybe you can finesse it a bit, but for most of us mortals in smaller businesses, we need to be special. We need to be the only ones who do what we do.
Love that. Okay, final thought. And so we're going to get real personal on this one. You think the sweat's over. It's about to come. Just kidding. I ask people this question every now and again. So Roy, playing into the deck of cards you got, to your point on, instead of creating sound and complicating things, focus more on simplicity and honesty. When it comes to that statement, that declaration you made earlier, along with creating things versus copying, where currently are you struggling within that? So what are you creating right now that you're wanting to keep really simple and honest, perhaps, and you feel for some reason a tension or a conflict or whatever, where it's drawing you to the complication side? You're becoming too heady about it. I don't know. I don't want to, sorry for priming it, but where are you struggling in this area? With what specifically? Well, there's got to be one. There's got to be one area that you're struggling. There's got to be one area. There always is.
Well, I mean, I guess this has been an issue for me ever since I've formally started this work, and that is against an objective of trying to change the conversation in the world, not in the world, but just out there, towards this whole notion of being different and only, etc. I'm not very happy with where I am. One of the reasons that you and I are talking today is that I'm trying to find as many channels to the conversation as I can to try and make a difference. I'm not altruistic, but I do feel it's an important thing that I at least keep the pressure on myself to keep pushing this message out. I just have to do that. And I love the conversations. I love the poke. I love that. It's not like I haven't been poked before, believe me. So it's a bit of a frustration, but on the other hand, doing what you and I are doing here has allowed me to meet some amazing people, excite every one of them. I haven't had one that I haven't excited in some way. And that keeps my juices flowing, and it keeps my energy level up to continue doing it. Helping an organization like the North Delta Business Association to use some of my stuff and actually get them off the ground. You kidding me? That is magic. And I love that. And so, like, if I fast forwarded it, what I'd really love is to see, I'd like to see my book sell out all over the world, not for the money. That's not what this is about. That would be an expression of acceptance. That would be an expression of, hey, the conversation is changing, Roy. You did it. Love to see that. And so I'm going to keep banging away at, I guess you could call it promoting. I'm calling it sharing my knowledge and sharing my history and sharing my successes and sharing my failures and sharing my relationships with my grandchildren. I'm just looking for opportunities to do that. And I'm grateful to you for the opportunity to do that.
Well, Roy, let me say this. We, the world, we see you, we hear you, and to a large degree, you not being happy with where you are, perhaps has you fuel into, and like you say, not promotion, just being with this this approach that has us be like, actually, guys, we can do better than just copying. Copying and creating, those are two very different things. Be different or be dead. The life that, think about this, audience, I know you're picking this up from him. He's a 76-year-old man. He's sparky. He's alive. He doesn't want it to be lost in the younger gen into society, that apparently we just got to buy into these social narratives. He's like, no, actually, who are you as a person? So Roy, I'll tell you something. We're happy where you are, because honestly, I think you're meeting society exactly where it needs to be constantly awakened. And don't get me wrong. We want you to be happy where you are, but for some reason, this is making a massive difference. So Roy, you got some energy. Tell me, where's this energy? Where might it take you? Not to give meaning to things you don't know. Let mystery be mystery. But where do you think this is taking you? This unsettled invitation for contentment that, and I don't know if I'm languaging this well. To me, I have a read on you which says you're content to a large degree, but you're unsettled within it. But at the same time, you have this hopeful presence about you. Like, tell me, where's this all taking you towards? If you could say, like, where are you feeling drawn to?
I have no idea. What I do know, because I've never believed in trend line thinking, and I've never believed in formulas that predict where the hell people are going. Never worked for me.
Crystal ball gazing doesn't work. Yeah.
What I do know is I'm not very satisfied with status quo. I've never been satisfied with it in any respect, whether it be my personal life, whether it be in society, whether it be in business. I'm not happy with it. There's much more that can be done. I'm not happy when employees complain about an abusive manager. I'm not happy about that. So there's all of that I bring from a very successful and rewarding and grateful career that has meaning every day. I mean, one of the problems I have is my wife keeps saying to me, when are you going to retire? And I keep saying, oh, that's a good question. But I keep thinking, and the other thing she says to me, James, is like, if I'm sitting there going like this and just kind of pondering, she says, stop thinking. Because she knows when I think of something and I lock on it, I move on it right away. It's just like boom, boom, right? Pause, action, reaction. And so that's never going to change. I don't know where it's going to end up. As long as I can be meaningful and be relevant, I will keep doing. And that's just it.
So perhaps,
wherever that'll take me.
So perhaps to sum this up, with inside of you, I see this: the grateful, youthful dead. You are allowing.
I like that. That's very good. That's very.
So maybe let that light you up, because the truth is, you're calling death upon certain things inside society, but you're so full of that youthful vibe. The grateful, youthful dead. Take that. There you go. Let that spread your wings, right? Roy, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for playing full out. And again, where can people find you?
On my website, bedifferentorbedead.com. I've got a blog. I got some resources there, and by email. I'm James. I'm happy have a conversation with anybody at roy.osing@gmail.com. And lastly, thanks so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed this. Absolutely the best conversation I've had. You're a great host, and I'm grateful that you chose me to shoot me on your audience. That's great.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. Take care.
I sincerely hope you enjoyed that little interplay. If you liked the podcast episode, let us know by subscribing, leaving a little review, and sharing with a friend as you feel appropriate. Honestly, the guests that I host on this show, they love the feedback, and I personally love knowing that you're listening. So whether you choose to work with me as a guide or not, and that's your guide or not, that's simply great. Why, you ask? Well, because you're obviously one of those that's listened to the very end of this podcast. You've clearly made a decision to invest in yourself. And honestly, how isn't that just the best news? So if you decide you need and or want to get unstuck by activating your creativity and inner resources, if you want to see things clearly, if you want to get to your next level, if you want to live with vibrant energy and passion, simply go to www.jameshepner.com for one-on-one coaching, and or go to www.weeklywinsandlosses.com for the no-charge Friday noon Global Community Weekly Wins and Losses video call. So again, I thank you for investing in yourself. See you next time. My sincere hope is that you've gleaned a few nuggets for yourself and a few pieces of interest that help you move forward in your unique journey. So again, I thank you for joining me here. This is James Hepner clocking out. Until next time, peace out, rock up.